Hey everybody, welcome, and thank you for listening to this episode of Marriage Therapy Radio. My name is Zach Brittle, and let's see. I'm here today with Dr. Hazel Grace Yates and their partner, Nico, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. But first, I want to cover a couple of things. Number one, I don't know how long you've been listening to the podcast, but if you've been around for more than a minute, you might remember Operation Blue Check. Operation Blue Check was my dream or fantasy of having one of those blue checks on your Instagram account, which we did it. We have a blue check now, which is amazing. We got to 5,000 somehow, and then we cleared the protocols or whatever it was, and now we're official. So thanks for that. Thanks for following on Instagram and for commenting and for sharing and whatever it took. I feel a little, I feel kind of fancy. Although I told my daughter a story the other day about something quirky that happened to me. I don't know if I've ever really shared this story on the internet, but I had a guy that I wanted to give one of my books to, and I signed it, I autographed it, and gave it to him, and was really excited about him reading it and having it change his whole life. Anyway, a few years later, I was online looking at my book. This one was The Relationship Alphabet, and I noticed that there was like a special copy or like an autographed copy, and I was like, well, this is weird. I wonder why there's an autographed copy, because I have all the copies, and I've only autographed a few. So I bought it for myself. I bought that book for myself, and it came to my house, and it was from the guy. It was the guy that I shared it with that I was really excited to have him read my book. And then, but it sounds like he immediately took it to the used bookstore in his hometown, and that's who I bought it from. So having gotten the blue check, my daughter then told me I lost all my aura points and that the blue check doesn't count. So I don't really know how Instagram works, but she's 23 and she knows things. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was pottery. I recently, as you know, have been thinking about like, what am I going to do with all this extra time as we empty nest and we do the next thing? Like, how do I continue to evolve my brain? So I took a pottery class. Rebecca gave me a gift certificate for Christmas, and I took my first class a couple weeks ago. And I got to tell you, it's kind of hard. I don't know if you've ever done this, the pottery with the wheel and the spinning and the clay. You know, I got a little bit of OCD, and I'm not sure, to be honest, if doing pottery like this is going to be like the perfect hobby for my OCD or the worst hobby for my OCD, because it is messy and it's unpredictable, and the clay doesn't necessarily do what you want it to do, even for seasoned potters, I think, even for seasoned people who were like good at this. Our teacher was sort of saying the clay kind of makes its own mind up sometimes. And I was thinking about in my like evangelical days, there's this notion, I don't know if it's a biblical notion or if it's just in a song or something, but something about God being the potter and us being the clay. And for the longest time, I think I just sort of adopted the idea that that was him molding us into the thing that we were supposed to become, or the thing that he wanted us to be, or whatever. And I don't think that's how it works. I don't think that's how it works. It's certainly not how clay works. Clay has an interesting way of deciding what it wants to be. And, I started out thinking I'm going to make a mug or I'm going to make a bowl. And what I ended up with was something, let's say I made two things. One of them could best be described as a thing you put your keys in. The other one would be maybe a jmug. It's like a cross between a jar and a mug. It sort of accidentally has a snout because of pottery being hard. But I think the more I think about it, the more I'm eager to go back and try again. I want to try and see if I can continue to get to know this process and end up making a thing that I want to make. I want to know if I can like decide at the front end that I'm going to make a thing and then have that thing get created. That might take a while. I think that's just the nature of being in this particular hobby. I think it's the nature of letting the clay direct you. I think it's the nature of honing and practicing a skill, all of which I can do. And I think all of which are actually relational. I think it is a relational endeavor to take this thing that you might have had really keen ideas about how it's supposed to look or how it's supposed to work, and realize that maybe it doesn't work like that. Maybe your only job really is to keep your hands on it and keep providing constraints. And then maybe also knowing a little bit of when like you've worked it a little too hard. Like my first thing was I think what I could successfully be called a pile of clay. So I made a thing and then it collapsed because I worked the clay too hard and it was just too much. I don't know if that's a thing about giving up, but my teacher was just sort of like, yeah, throw it away, start over, which I guess wouldn't be my main thing about relationships, but it would be my way of thinking about how to stay connected and how to continue to do repair, which I think is a fine lead into our interview with Hazel Grace and Nico. This is sort of a two-part conversation. The first one ends up being a little bit about how they have constructed their relationship. They are in a polyamorous relationship where they are each other's primary partner, and they have really clearly thought out ideas about how that works. And then we have a whole discussion about repair, which I think is a really lovely skill that can be practiced. And I think it should be practiced, not unlike pottery. And Hazel Grace has a very interesting take on repair, has created a little, I think they're called mnemonics, that we get to hear about. They teach us about how R and E and P and A and I all come together to create something like reconnection with your partner. And I'm grateful for Hazel Grace and for Nico sharing their perspective here. And I think you'll dig it. This is a very cool conversation. Stick around. One thing I'm really proud of as I get older is how much I let go of like stuff that I think I believe in or I'm entitled to or somehow know. And so I'm surprised and grateful that I'm finding myself in a position of like being willing to learn and learn from anyone. Like I actually, again, I say that with no ego. I'm saying that like I'm kind of surprised. I'm like, oh, I'll learn that. Sure, why not? That seems like a thing I should learn. That's cool. So anyway, yeah, now I'm like hyper attuned to it.
I'm also proud of, for what it's worth.
Oh, thanks. Right on. Well, Nico, have you ever been on a podcast before?
I feel like we've done.
Yes, you have.
I'm all over the internet, but I never know because I don't actually participate in the actual interneting part of it. So it sounds like I have been.
He has been. We've done 3.
Great.
What do you mean I'm all over the internet?
Hazel Grace posts things about me and us in the relationship, and so does my other partner. And I don't look at any of it. I don't write any of it. I don't read any of it. I'm just I get told by other people that I'm on there.
Right on. All right. Well, there it is. So does my other partner. Tell me about that. You both have other partners, or you have other partners, or how does that part of your relationship work?
Yeah. So we identify as polyamorous. I've been practicing polyamory for over a decade, and I have another regular partner that I see, like once a month or so. And yeah, I've been with her for just a bit longer than I've been with Hazel Grace.
Yep, y'all are approaching 8 years.
Approaching 8 years. Yeah. So, yeah, and she has her other sort of main partner, and he lives a mile up the road from me, and we're really close, good friends, and so we all 3 of us hang out together, and yeah.
And I've been practicing polyamory for 20 years, and I've been very poly until I met this guy 7 years ago, and I say I felt more monogamous in the last 7 years than I have in the 20 years that I've been polyamorous. And I make jokes that Nico's ruined me because I have not met anybody that I'm interested in. The bar has been set so high. However, I just went on a really great date last week that, and Nico actually knows the guy and gave the thumbs up approval. And I'm very excited about this new potential sweetie in my life.
Yeah, right on. Nico, you said the 3 of us hang out. Do the 4 of us ever hang out? Is that a thing?
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely spend time together. It's a lot of just in community events and sort of different family affair type things. I would say we don't intentionally spend a whole bunch of time together,
We don't go
But
on double dates that are kind of.
I mean, we have gone on double dates, but it's not a common thing. The Nico, Ame, and Neptune enjoy hanging out more than I enjoy hanging out with the four of them. But last summer we were on a vacation together with a group of people, and I went to Ame's birthday party a couple weekends ago. So I love Ame, who's my metamor. Metamor is my partner of my partner.
Okay.
And so we have deep care trust, and she's not someone that I like. I don't hang out one-on-one with Ame a lot, but she's a part of our polycule, and it's a really sweet, beautiful, caring polycule.
Yeah, like I said, as I get older, the more I'm like, okay, I'll learn from stuff. And I think I might have mentioned to you before, I came up in a very normcore, like, this is how it works, including things around like how you went to college and how you spent your money and and again, the older I get, the more I'm like, oh, you don't have to do it that way. You could do it other ways, that people that can kind of figure out how to make that work. How did you figure out how to make that work? Did you wake up one day and be like, I think I'm going to do this, or did you have your own entry, or how did you find yourself here?
yeah, so I had so when I met my former partner, my technically still my like wife on paper, Avani, we met at a time where we were both coming out of our sort of long-term monogamous relationships that we realized didn't work for us, and that we were wanting to explore open relating.
Uh,
And so I got to start learning about open relating and polyamory with somebody who was also sort of on that same journey. So that was really cool that we got to learn and grow together. We throughout our 7 years together had other partners, and we're learning how to do the open relating thing. But the thing that really clicked for me, that was an aha, was just kind of like you're saying, is that the realization that we get to make whatever it is that we want in
mm,
relationship if we choose. Like,
uh-huh.
being in relationship with somebody, intimate relationship, doesn't automatically come with a set of rules or instructions. It's like, oh, well, like how is it that you want to exist? How do you want to relate to the people in your life? And so that was the thing that really did it for me, is just really realizing that, we get to make up whatever we want, and choose what's most aligned for us. So that was a beautiful way to sort of enter into it. And there was a lot of learning and growing that happened, that got me to the point of learning how to do that well.
Hmm.
Growing pains and hiccups and challenges all the way through were all um, really beautiful growth moments. Like, I like to say that polyamory is the biggest growth edge I've ever experienced in my life.
Mm.
Just learning how to navigate. Obviously there's personal motivation and like, what is it that I want in a relationship, but also being really tuned into the relational ecosystem, and like what is good for everybody. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about it, is that when it's all above board and we all agree on what it is that we want to do and how we want to relate, we can settle into that more and explore what that means to each of us, and continue to grow and morph and change around what it is that we want in a relationship, what's working, what's not.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Hazel Grace, what about you?
I was getting a master's degree in college in Michigan, and someone said the word polyamory to me, and I was like, what is that? And
Mm-hmm.
as soon as they said what it was, I was like, no wonder relationships haven't made sense to me, because that
Mm,
makes sense to me. And it was just like this automatic, like, this is who I am. This makes sense. And the book at the time, which was the Polyamory Bible, which is The Ethical Slut, was the first book I ever read on it. And it was just
mm,
like, it just made sense to me.
mm,
Um, and Nico and I were dating in 2019. I was living in Colorado. He was living in Northern California. And I was angry. I was cursing at the universe for finally meeting my person, but he was living very far away. Things happened and COVID happened. And so it made the most sense for me to not lose the house that I had just purchased in Denver if I moved in with Nico. So I called Nico and I said, Nico, I know this sounds crazy. We're 10 months into our relationship. If I drive and move up, go out there just for COVID, I could potentially not lose the house I just bought, turn it into an Airbnb. And he said, let me check in with my wife. And he calls me back 5 minutes later and he says, she said, we'll figure it out. Come on out. So I spent a few hours throwing bags into my car just for COVID and drove out here. And I moved in with him and his wife in a 500 square foot house in the middle of winter, which was like, whew, that was polyamory on steroids. My PhD in polyamory during COVID, moving, like leaving my community where I lived for 15 years, and my clients and my community, and so it was a big stretch, and it was beautiful, and I'm really proud and impressed with how we navigated it. And it was sure uncomfortable and hard sometimes. It was hard for me. I didn't have a bed for like 6 months. I was like living outside in the unfinished bathhouse, or living in the van, or like sleeping in the tent outdoors. It was courageous.
Right on. I am sure that I have a ton of misconceptions about what polyamory is. I wonder though if you could tell us, like, what are the main ones, and how do you flip them over? I mean, an easy one for me is that people choose to pursue open relationships because they're unhappy with what they're getting in their current relationship, and they're looking just for a way to kill two birds with one stone, have their cake and eat it too, right? I don't have to do the painful thing of leaving this relationship. So how about we open it up? Like, I've heard that too many times to count, but those are the ones that often fall apart. Like, if I'm looking for an escape from something, I usually don't find the solution in some, made up relational dynamic that I haven't really thought through. But what other misconceptions or how do you even think about that one?
I mean, that sounds likened to someone saying, I know what's going to save our marriage. Let's have a baby.
Yeah.
That feels like to that kind of thinking, which sets people up for failure, I think. So, I mean, in our case, we came to polyamory because it's how we identify. And, the simplicity for me of polyamory is in the word. What does the word mean? Poly means multiple, amory means love, multiple love. And that can look like many things. And Nico and I identify that we are in a throuple, so like a triangular relationship. But the other person that we are in a throuple with, we don't have sex with him, but we are like family, and we share meals together, and we help each other do laundry. We live on the same land, and he's integrated into our family. And he is in relationship with us. We just aren't sexual with him.
That's a new scenario that you haven't already described to me, right?
Correct.
This is a third. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So also counts.
For us, it does. And that's what's cool. It's like, it's like imagining a snowflake. There's like infinite numbers of snowflakes. And so this can look like, I get fascinated by the infinite possibilities that there are in the world of polyamory, because there's, you can have someone that's in a relationship where someone is like monogamous within the relationship, and the other person, might have other relationships. So it's just endless of what the possibilities are. And like Nico said, it's like checking in with the ecosystem of the people that are connected to those relationships is what feels true and healthy and well for the relationship. And one of the grounding philosophies that Nico and I have is that if we're going to choose to engage with a person outside of our relationship, that the intention is that person is going to enhance and add value to our lives in whatever way that looks like. But it's like, I think the beautiful thing about polyamory is that like Nico is not going to be my everything always for meet all of my needs all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so like how cool it is that there could be other people that come along that maybe like have a particular different prism of spirit or personality or enjoyment of an activity that Nico can't meet me, and vice versa. So yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love all that. And I think the one thing that's popping into my mind in just response to your question is just sort of this idea of like how can this idea sort of be misconstrued? And I feel like there's something that really draws people to it, but also there's a second part that's often missed. So I guess what I'm trying to say is a big part of, I think, people's attraction to polyamory and also my own is this idea of essentially getting to do what I want in relationship, getting to choose an experience for myself and relating with somebody, and like that's beneficial to myself. So what I feel like a lot of people think is, oh well, polyamory means I can just do whatever I want. And if that's the way that you've set up your agreements in your relationship, that's true. But the second half that I find that's often missing is, so I get to do whatever it is that I want in a relationship, and I get to show up for the impact and the consequences of my actions. Right. So like the first part I feel like is easy for people of like, sweet, I can do whatever it is that I want. And the part that I feel like is a lot of the time missing or misunderstood is like understanding your impact on those around you and the relationships that you're in, and actually showing up and putting in the time and energy and effort and learning the communication skills to navigate what comes up, in choosing those actions. Because just because I'm totally free to engage with somebody and have a relationship and even fall in love with somebody doesn't mean that I'm negating my partner's feelings and relationship to me having that relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's lots of different structures, of course, and Nico and I identify as being anchor partners, and that feels important for us to use versus the term primary, because primary can have for some people that can be coupled with hierarchical power.
Mm.
So Nico and I don't have that. We don't have to ask permission. There's not a checking in of, there is a consideration and care. We do have, a clear agreements with our whole polycule about engaging sexually in a good way. And so we have an ongoing thread of just keeping everyone posted. And so we have really clear agreements about when we're engaging sexually with people. But yeah, so we don't have to check in. There's no veto power. And when we make choices, because we're very kind partners, we are considering the other person.
Mm-hmm. You're mentioning it a little bit. Another misconception a lot about polyamory is that it's all about sex, or it's primarily about sex. But you've got this love relationship with the guy who lives on your property that is like this other version, and then maybe you have other versions. I mean, I'm not. But so I think the thing that is intriguing to me about kind of how you're describing it is this idea of this is how we identify, or this is how I identify. It's not necessarily a thing you're doing as much as a way you are. Is that closer?
That feels true.
Yeah, I relate to that very much.
Okay, I want to shift gears a tiny bit. I think you were joking when you said you got a PhD in polyamory by virtue of like living in this 500 square foot house with two other people. You do have a PhD though in...
I do, in human sexuality.
Right on. And so, Nico, I know Hazel Grace from a different context, and you and I are just meeting, and I get this question a lot, or my wife does anyway. What's it like to be in relationship with a relationship expert or a human sexuality expert, or what is that for you? How do you describe that to people, or to yourself even?
I would say that it's fascinating to me. It's really fun for me. So I'm also a relationship nerd, and I'm very curious and interested and always learning about the human experience in relationships. Um, I would say that there is an aspect of it that is like an invitation to be my best self in
Mm,
relationship. Like
mm.
there's like a certain level of standard of integrity that is just, you know, inherent in the way that we operate, but also with Hazel Grace being so public and being a teacher in this, it's like another layer of inviting like rigorous integrity,
Yeah.
uh, which I actually I like and I appreciate. I like to think that that's how I would be anyway. It's not just because of that, but I could see that being challenging for some people. But I like it for what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really enjoy geeking out and getting to be a sounding board for Hazel Grace as well in their work around that, and I feel like I get to be a supportive influence and you know, so that Hazel Grace is also so Hazel Grace isn't just in an echo chamber, you know, like getting to bring in my perspective.
Yeah.
Hmm. He also does teach with me sometimes.
Right on. Um, yeah, I think you're saying something that I say a lot, which is people will ask me if I have a perfect marriage. And I say, I don't have a perfect marriage, but I also don't have any excuses. Like the idea of being connected to this kind of content and in this world as much as I am means I don't get to go, well, I don't know how to do that, or I never learned, or I don't know if that's a priority right now. Um, it just raises the level of, what did you say, integrity, or like kind of raises the awareness around how important that is in this effort. Hey, gang, just a quick break in the action to talk about my energy right now around date night, both for myself and for you, and just really for finding ways for couples, for people, for me to connect with the people that we love in ways that leave it all in the room, that we just kind of shut everything else out and we work on just staying connected to one another. There's tons of ways to do this. And you don't always need a babysitter or even a plan. I'm very excited about a new partnership with Giddybox. Spent about a half an hour earlier this week talking to Josh over there and listening to his vision and his talent and his passion and his interest in crafting date night experiences for couples. Some of them are custom date night experiences, and some of them are just subscriptions like you can find anywhere else. But I'm, again, very encouraged by hearing a little bit of his passion and his energy, and I'm looking forward to partnering with him. I would love for you to check it out. You can go to getgiddybox.com. If you use the code MTR, you get a percentage off your order, which I think is fantastic. Rebecca and I have scheduled our first date night with Giddybox coming up this week, so I look forward to telling you a little bit more about it. But in the meantime, if you're looking for a way to quickly and easily connect without having to think of a new thing or break the bank, check out Giddybox. You can go to getgiddybox.com and use the code MTR on your order. But no matter what you do, find a way to connect in a way that leaves everything that's not in the room outside the room. We are playing video games. We are learning how to dance. We are checking out softball games. We're always watching shows that we like, but we're trying to mix it up a little bit. And I'm grateful for Josh and his work, and I would encourage you to check it out. Again, that's Get Giddybox. Use the code MTR, and then let me know how it goes. I want to hear about your experience with it. So does Josh. I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about ours as we learn more about it. It's the box we have is a month of dates. So we got one box. It's got 4 dates in it. You do one after week. They build on each other. We're really excited to share it with one another and with you. So yeah, check that out. And now let's get back to our very cool conversation. You have a thing that you call the art of repair. I want to hear about that. I want to hear about why that's your topic, why that's the thing that you care about. It's my favorite topic, but I want to know where that comes from for you personally, and and then I want you to tell me about it.
Yeah. So the origin story is I grew up in a household that was full of love and support and nurturing and safety. And also my father was militaristic disciplinarian
Mm.
and heavy hand and expected perfection, and when it wasn't, we would get hit or yelled at. And so it was a very so I grew up with the combination of love and violence were coupled. They were melded together. And so then I went and spent 20 years in toxic, abusive relationships, sexual, physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, any kind of abuse. I did it all. I did it good, Zach. And then I was just so bound and determined to experience a healthy relationship in my lifetime. And my dad and I had, over the years, I had attempted several different repair conversations about the impacts of what it was like growing up like that. And each time I tried and we didn't get there, I was like, back to therapy, until I had this conversation with him. And I had done so much of my internal work that I came to him so soft and so in my compassionate, gentle heart of just like, Dad, I really want you to hear what it was like for me growing up. And if you're willing to tell me what you heard me say. And I was just, all I ever wanted was for him to acknowledge, hear, understand, and take responsibility for what he had done. And I hadn't gotten that yet. And so this one conversation, there was like a before our relationship and after relationship kind of conversation. And he was able to feedback what I said, even though he didn't know what the hell that meant. I told him how to do it. And he said, what I'm hearing is when I yelled at you and I hit you growing up, you were terrified. And one of the impacts was you then dated men who treated you the same way. And I never thought I was going to get that in my lifetime, Zach. And the next day he calls me and he says, I can't go back and change what I did, but I want to show up for you now, and I'd like to pay for your therapy for the rest of your life.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I have taken him up on that. Trust you.
You're like, and now I see Terry Real 3 times a week. And
and then 6 months later, I met Nico. And so much of the art of repair came from those conversations I had with my dad, has come from the years of being in relationship with Nico, and also the 14 years of working professionally as an intimacy and relationship coach. And the actual structure itself came when I was sitting in a tree. I was doing a solo vision fast, and I was sitting in this tree, and the word repair showed up with all the words, and it was the structure that encapsulated the process of teaching people how to navigate after ruptures. And so, I would have clients come to me all the time, and they're like, we want better sex. And I kept finding myself as a sex coach over and over and over, coaching people on how to communicate and how to clear the ruptures and the pain that was buried underneath. Because it's like, you don't want to have sex because you're in pain and you don't know how to clear and get out of that pain. So I kept finding myself doing that over and over. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And so now I'm really inspired about doing intergenerational healing and teaching, kids and their adult kids. That is lighting me up more than anything right now. And then you'll probably have great sex.
Well, yeah, I get the part that it's hard to have intimate sex with somebody that you're in disrepair with. It's the hard work of knowing that you're in disrepair is sometimes challenging, and then pursuing that thing is a different piece of work altogether. Nico, do you have a repair origin story of your own?
I grew up very differently from Hazel Grace. Well, not so differently, but somewhat differently in that my parents, I never saw my parents fight. They never raised their voices at each other. My father was like strict and firm, but never mean, never, like couple spank, like sometimes getting spanked growing up, but he loathed to do it, like his father would hit him with a with a belt, and he was like, "I'm not ever going to do that. I'm always going to use my hand, so I know how how
Mm,
hard I'm hitting." He was very very aware of not perpetuating sort of his father's way
mhm,
um, enforcing punishment. But I also didn't get to see my parents repair or resolve. I didn't necessarily get, even though I had a great example of my parents being in love and a successful monogamous relationship, and my grandparents on both sides. I had a lot of really good examples of successful monogamous relationships. I didn't have any skills taught to me, but I was always very interested in, and was always sort of a harmonizer, and breaking up fights in school, and just like interested in that. And I went on to have multiple long-term relationships, and they were all very nice and sweet. And um, I didn't we weren't fighting. We didn't. I've not spent a lot of time fighting in a relationship. Um,
huh,
and so when Hazel Grace and I um, started dating, and there was a lot of sort of learning and development that was happening. um, I was just really intrigued, and was really loving that. Hazel Grace put in all of this effort to learn these things and to understand them really deeply. I got to have the experience of being in relationship and having experiential knowledge of it, but not necessarily having the language for it. And so it was really fascinating for me, and fun and exciting to get to actually put words to these things that we were experiencing, that we were doing. And so it was sort of a continuation of how I felt like I was being, but expansive, and we got to explore that more deeply. And
mm,
yeah, so it was a really cool experience for me. Continues to be an amazing experience for me, for us to get to unpack and learn and figure out, um, why it is the way that we are acting the way that we are, and that it works well, and that it's
mm.
harmonious. So
Yeah, I think you said this thing gets tucked into what you said, but for those of us and those of you out there who grew up in homes that you never saw your parents argue, you also never saw them repair. So it's like you may have been spared the kind of the violence piece of it, but you didn't ever get the other side. And maybe that's what you're describing when you talk about, it was a fine environment to grow up in. It just you didn't learn these skills.
yeah, and it was also, so what happened more recently, so my mother passed away a number of years ago, and I've become closer with my father, and like finally started having more deeper conversations with my father, who didn't have good demonstrations of how to communicate, so therefore
Uh-huh.
limited in his capacity. And I basically recently learned, oh, my parents swept everything under the rug. They weren't actually dealing with their things. They weren't fighting, but they were also like not harmonious all of the time. And so
Uh-huh.
that's also what I learned, and what I learned to emulate is avoidance, essentially. Conflict avoidance. And even still, even with the skills that I have, it's you know it's difficult to have difficult conversations, and I'll get kind of worked up about it internally, and like a lot of anticipatory grief before actually having the conversation, even
Mm,
now that I have the skills. So
mm,
I mean, I think the way that I've heard you describe it is like they weren't fighting. They were sweeping things under the rug, and the cost was there was like lack of like depthful, intimate connection. Like that was like one of the costs was,
mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
lack of depth.
Which something I've really I've liked, a friend of ours put language to for me recently, is being being emotionally current with somebody. Like, even if there's sort of things that we've swept under the rug, we can still be copacetic, and we can be sweet, and we can be
yeah,
loving, and all of that, but without actually getting to the point of unpacking those, the availability for intimacy to actually like grow and blossom and deepen, it just doesn't feel like it's there without that emotional currency.
Yeah.
Or being emotionally current.
Yeah. Hazel Grace, I'm going to put you on the spot because you just finished a course that I taught. One day you logged on and you were happy because you were like, last night me and Nico repaired. And then you revealed that, and I was the one who messed it up. Do you remember that? And like, so this was,
Oh yeah,
like,
I remember
I got to practice being on the other side because usually I don't embedded maybe in there is usually Nico's the one who creates the rupture, but whatever it was in this case, you were like, I was the one who created the rupture. So can you tell us that story? What happened? Like, how did
I am excited to talk about how I showed up in a way that I needed to repair with Nico, partly because there's been this inequity or this imbalance of like a lot of the repairs have been one way, meaning I'm the one who's like really hurt, which has just been an interesting thing for us to like look at over the 7 years. And part of that is Nico for sure has made clear mistakes. He's broken agreements. But also because of my trauma background, I feel like there's more potential for me to like feel hurt and not be triggered by. So, but this one time that you speak of happened, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago. I had okay, so I come home from a 2-week trip, and I was like super excited to see Nico, and I walk into his home. And I have this like hope and excitement and anticipation of being like, oh, you're home, my little baby, you're home.
Yeah.
And I see him and he is folding laundry and putting clothes into his drawer and not coming towards me. And when he comes towards me, he's just like looks sullen and like his shoulders are kind of down. And I'm like, you don't seem excited to see me. And he was like, I'm actually not feeling very well. And I was just, my heart was just broken. And I was just in this like fixed position of like, this must mean that you don't love me as much as I love you. Or like, I can't believe you're not excited to see me. And I was just really in it. And then Nico was like, well, you also don't look excited to see me. And, oh, wait. That was one of the things that did happen. Oh, you broke your ankle. Oh, that's the one. That's the one. I mean, that's the more potent one.
So the other one was this sort of rupture that was actually fruitful in coming more into connection with, because I was like, this is also a story that's come up before, where Hazel Grace is like, you're not acting the way I thought you would, and it must mean da 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 da. And I'm like, this story's getting a little old, like, so that was a thing, and that was helpful to process. But this other one was
okay, I got it.
Yeah, you got it.
So I get home.
Well, you're demonstrating also in real time that our memories are fallible. Like we think we know exactly what happened and in what order, and you can't even remember, was it this or was that? No, that was a different one. And that was the thing. And I've had people disagree about what room they were in. They were quoting each other directly. Quotes are exactly right. But I was in the car. No, we were in the kitchen. It's fascinating what memory does. Anyway, so this other one is...
So this other one is, I'm in town doing something, and Nico texts me. He's like, hey, can you stop by when you come home? Nico and I don't live in the same house, by the way. We each have our own tiny homes. We're 1 minute walk away. And so I was driving home, and Nico said, can you stop by? I need to tell you something.
And I didn't text it because you were out having fun with somebody. You were out having a good time, and I didn't want to be a downer.
So I walk in, and he's laying there, and he's watching a movie, and he says, I think I broke my ankle. And I got pretty angry pretty quickly. Like, if you broke your ankle, why are you not taking actions to take care of your potential broken ankle? And then he said, I don't know where my...
No, I'm waiting to hear back from my login because my medical, which I hadn't had to use in this configuration, is linked to my former partner still, who I'm legally married to, and so I had to get some information from her. So I was waiting to get information from her.
Yeah,
Okay.
what I heard you say is what I remember hearing you say is, I don't have my medical card. And so I got really hot. I got really hot because I'm like, I want you to take care of your body. How do you not have your medical card? And it looked like when I walked in that he wasn't like taking action steps or like taking care of it. And he's like, oh, I think I'll just like check it out in the morning. And I was like, no, you need to go right in the morning in urgent care. And I just got really, really intense. And at some point, Nico said, I actually just need some space. I'm not willing to meet you here because I was not in a state of actually supportive or helpful at all. And so I remember he was on the bed and I was on the floor and I just laid down and I was like putting my knees up and I was just like breathing, and I was not willing to speak until I felt like I was in a more caring, centered, grounded state. So that's when I made a mistake. And then we were able to, and once we were able to kind of like come down in more center and you got the medical card, I was able to support him in learning about the American medical system, which Nico is new to. He's Canadian, and kind of support him and help him figure out where to go by what time and advise him to, get there early and blah, 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 blah. So that was a moment where I got to repair with Nico.
Well, okay, but how does that connected say to this thing that you've designed called the art of repair? What are the elements that you were cherry picking, or maybe all of them? Did you work through a process? Did you just get lucky? Is it so built into you? But what would you point to that says this is how you do it?
Yeah. So the first step in the process is resourcing. So once I recognize
the art of repair, does the art of repair, each letter stands for something? I noticed when you send it to me, you always send it in all caps, REPAIR. There's like,
yep, it's an acronym.
All right, repair. Right on.
So it's 6 steps.
I like those.
What's that?
I like those. The first R is to recognize. Is that what you said?
Resourcing. So
resourcing.
So it's pausing. Pausing.
Mm-hmm.
And so as soon as Nico said, I can't handle this right now, it helped me like become aware that I was dysregulated and I was not in a position to either repair what I just did or help or something. So my job right in that moment was to stop and disconnect from Nico and ground in myself. And so I laid on the floor and I was holding my legs and I was just breathing until I felt centered and calm enough to be able to come back into the conversation. And
essentially what I was doing in the moment was, even though I was also dysregulated, I was overwhelmed, and Hazel Grace's reaction to me in that situation was causing me to be even more overwhelmed. And so by me saying, I actually just need some space right now was essentially the same move of like, I'm needing to resource myself by not being with your reaction right now. So we're both doing that.
Yeah. So as I'm also laying there resourcing myself, the next step in the process is empathy. Empathy for self and other. Like I was like, as I was resourcing myself, I was like, oh, wow, this is a really shitty situation. Nico's ankle is broke. He can't find his medical card. And I come in and I yell at him like, wow, that must be really shitty for him. Empathy for myself of like, I really care about my partner. And it's a big deal to me that he doesn't know where his medical card is and he could have a broken ankle and I want him to get his care, right? So empathy for self and for other. And then the permission to have a repair conversation is hey, Nico, and this is later, some other point later of like, hey, are you open to have a conversation about how I was showing up for you in that moment?
I
So
love
that,
that word, permission. I absolutely love that word. It's contracting, right? It's saying is now a good time to do this thing that maybe even in spite of your resourcing, you haven't quite equipped yourself for. So, I
yeah,
love it. What a nice
yeah.
surprise.
So I want to talk about how I showed up so that we can come back into connection. And this moment, I'm feeling like a level 2 or 3 on the charge scale. I think it'll take 5 minutes. Are you open to having that conversation?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the permission. The next step in the process is acknowledge. So acknowledge is let's talk about what happened. Let's get on the same page about what we remember. What's your reality? What's my reality? Our realities either match or they don't. And that's okay if they don't, as long as we understand one another's reality. It's not about who's right. It's not about disagreement, agreement. It's about this is your reality, my reality, that they either match. In this case, they matched. So I said, when I got home, you were laying on the bed. You said you didn't know where your medical card was. And then I started raising my voice and asking and basically berating you for not being responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yep, that's what I remember happening. And so after we acknowledge what happened, then we move into impact. So the impact is, what was that like for you when I was treating you that way? And so, Nico got to say that he was feeling overwhelmed and shut down and hot and needed space. And the impact on me was feeling like embarrassed and sad that I was treating my partner that way. And the last step in the process is called restore integrity, which there's 5 different actionable steps that you can take to begin to rebuild the trust. It's a menu. You don't have to do all of them. One of them is pretty simple: remorse. I apologize. I regret. That wasn't kind. That's not how I want to show up. If we could go back in time, redo is one of them. Another option, if we could go back in time, as soon as I recognized that I was hot, I maybe would have walked back out, put my feet on the ground, or when I sensed that I was not actually helping the situation, maybe asking like, "How can I support you?" instead of berating him. And then Nico, if we were to redo that situation, what would you have wanted done differently?
Yeah, just more of a check-in and like, hey, how are you? How is your body? How are you feeling about this? Just those sorts of things.
Yeah, super
Or
fair.
maybe you would have not broken your ankle. I would have not hurt
Yeah.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the repair process in 4 minutes or
Yeah.
less.
Man, I love it. I love it. I think it's very cool. There were a couple of surprises in there, even for me. I mean, they make sense to me, but the thing I like about it is, in particular, this idea of permission being the third thing. Like you don't just like immediately go, "Hey, can I do this?" without resourcing yourself or finding empathy. I mean, that's a really critical step in the equation, and I'm glad to know of it. I'm going to steal it and share it with people. And also, if people want to learn more about it, though, from you or with you, talk about how that works in your world, in your scene.
Yeah, so you can find all the information at my website, drhazelgrace.com. I teach in-person workshops in Northern California and Colorado. There's an online course that you can take, self-paced course. I work one-on-one with couples. Nico and I are teaching at Esalen Institute. This is our 2nd year in a row to teach, so you could find us over there.
Which is
But
where? Where did you say?
the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California.
Okay, yeah. I'll check that out. And then Nico, what do you do? What's your jam? Like when you wake up in the morning, what happens next?
So I'm a sawyer. I'm basically a lumberjack. I'm one who saws wood.
Okay.
I have a mobile sawmill business. I go to people's property and cut their trees into lumber for them. And then also in the winter I do snow removal up in mountains.
I love it.
Very, very much physical, hands-on, labory type things.
I don't think I ever knew that word, sawyer. Like that's a person who saws for a living.
Yeah, one who saws wood.
And is that what Tom Sawyer's last name is?
Yep.
His comes from Is that connected to the novel or the story at all? Do we know anything about his family, or it just happens to be his last name?
I
Or do you know?
don't know. It's been so long since I've read it. It was in high school or whatever.
Yeah,
But
right on.
so that's like a lot of the root of a lot of people's last names.
Yeah.
Old
Is
world
there
had a lot to do with what it is with
what
their
role they had in their community? Yeah.
yeah
And every once in a while, he teaches with me.
Yeah, that's cool. I love it. I'm really glad we got to make this happen. I really enjoyed having you in my class, and you added a ton of value to our whole scene. And love what you're doing. And today we got like a part 1 and a part 2. We got to learn a little bit about polyamory. We got to a little bit about the art of repair. And I think I'm just glad that we were able to make it happen. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Zach.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Hazel Grace and Nico, for joining Marriage Therapy Radio, for letting us inside your relationship. If you have enjoyed hearing from them, I also want to point you at Hazel Grace's website. It's Dr. Hazel Grace, DrHazel Grace.com. And there you can get an Art of Repair mini course for free. And I think this is really solid work. I've passed it on to my clients, and I'm really grateful to have learned about it. I hope that you are too. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share and all that stuff. Also, be grateful for any 5-star reviews you can leave at Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And join the Patreon community. It's the best way to stay connected to Marriage Therapy Radio. So thanks for that. And thanks for all the time and attention you're putting into making your relationship better today than it was yesterday.